In this session, we'll be discussing what are the topics covered under this module 2. We will have an introduction to lists. We will see how we can access the list through index, and we will study a concept called as negative index. So in this module 2, we will be discussing mainly about the list, how to work with the list, what are the augmented assignment operators, what are methods. We will also write a program called as Magic 8 Ball program with a list. And we will also see some list like types like strings, tuples, references. We will study about dictionary, structuring data, pretty printing, and data structures to model real world. In this session, we will discuss about what we will start with lists, and we will see how lists can be created. We will also see how we can access the list through index, and we will study the concept of negative index. Initially, let's try to understand where or what is list and tuples. See, list and tuple, there can be situations where we want to have multiple values, when we want our variables to contain multiple values. In that cases, you can go for tuples or list based upon the situation, which we will see in the next few sessions. So basically, list and tuples are used to hold multiple values, and that makes handling the program easier as the amount of data keeps on exceeding. Still, it's easier to handle the program when you're going for list or tuples. So in this session, we will just have a brief introduction to list, how the list is created, and how we can access the items of a list. So first, let's understand what is a list. List is a value which contains multiple values in an ordered sequence. For example, I have a case where I want to store these values cat, bat, rat, elephant into in a particular place. Then I can go for list. Okay, so how do you create a list? You have to enclose all these values inside square brackets, and these individual values, we call it as items. They have to be separated by a comma. Now, since these are strings, we are enclosing in single quotes. So just to revise, list is a value that contains multiple values in an order sequenced order. So when you're creating a list, remember, enclose these multiple values inside square brackets, and these values inside the list are called as the items, which have to be separated by a comma. So what can list contain? It can contain strings, like in this example where we have only strings. And how do I come to know it's a string? Because these values, cat is enclosed within single quote, bat is enclosed within single quote. So that's how we identify it's a string. List can also contain only integers, like in this case 1, 2, 3, where the items are just separated by commas. Or list can contain string as well as it can be integers, floating point numbers, boolean values, none data type, as we see in this example. So let's go to the IDLE screen and create list. So how do I create a list? Just give 1, 2, 3 within square brackets. So this will create a list. So this is a list where I am having the items as 1, 2, and 3. Now let's create a list with string values. So let's do something like this. So you can see here I've created a list with 2 values which are actually strings, and these are called as items of the list. Python is an item of a list, and programming is an item of this list. So when you print this, it will be created. You can also assign the list to a variable. Let's say I have a variable called as spam, and inside that I want to assign a list to it. So when I say spam again, it will be printed on the screen. So you can assign this to a variable. Now I can also have a list which is having different kinds of values belonging to different data types. Like it can have a string. Next it can have an integer. Next it can have a floating point number. Next, let's say it has a boolean value. Next, let's say it has a none data value. So like this, I can have a list which can have different items of different data types in one list. Okay, and I can also have a empty list like this. If I want to create an empty list without any value, that is also possible. So if I create this and I want to see, you can see that nothing is printed. So it's basically a list without any values. So let's see how we can access the values within a list or the items of a list. If you want to access the items of a list, you have to access it through something called as index. So this, let's see this example where I have a spam is a variable containing these 4 items. If I want to access cat, then I have to give spam 0, 0 enclosed within square brackets. If I want to access bat, then I give spam 1. So that means what? Index, the 0, 1, 2, 3 is the index. And when you are accessing the items of a list, it starts from 0. If you start from the left hand side, the index starts from 0 and then it goes on incrementing 0, 1, 2, 3, so on. Okay, and you can also use string concatenation operator over here. Let's see this on the IDLE screen. So let's first create a list. Okay, so if I want to access, let's say, the first item of the list, then I have to give spam 0 within square brackets. So 11 is printed on the screen. Then if I give spam 1, 22 is printed. Then if I give spam 3, 44 is printed. So what is this? The index of this is 0. This is 1, 2, 3 and 4. I can also use string concatenation operator with this. So let's say I give a string called as hello. Then I give plus, and then let's say I want to print hello 33. Then what do I give? Spam 0, 1, 2. So I just give you a, so what I am saying, hello. This is a string concatenation operator. What is spam 2? Spam 2 is 33. Will this work? No, this will give you an error because spam 2 is actually an integer over here. So it will give you a, because as we have seen in the previous session, string concatenation operator can only concatenate strings. Both these, both sides you need to have strings. But in this case, spam 2 is an integer. So let's see what kind of error it gives. So it is saying a type error saying you can only concatenate string with a string and not with an integer. So how can we modify this? You have to do typecasting. So typecast it to string. See, now it works. So that means you can do string concatenation operator, and this is an example of string concatenation with indexing demonstration. So some concepts that you need to know is what happens if you give an index which is more than the existing range. So that means here I have spam as an index which is having 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That means the index ranges from 0 to 4 only. But suppose I give here spam 5. Then it will give you an error saying that list index it out of range. Let's see the next case. Can I use index value as a float? We have seen here if I give spam 2, 2 is an integer. Can I give instead of that 2.0? No, it will give you an error saying that indices must be integers or slices but not float. We will see the slicing concept in the next session. Now, can we have multiple indexes? In the sense, can I have list within a list? So let's see this example. So let's create a list, let's say, which is having some list something like this, and I will have another list also, let's say, which is having some floating values. So what is done here? I have created a list called as spam, which is having first list as 1, 2, 3 and the second list as A, B, B and C, C. So when I give print, let's try to see what spam is having. You can see spam is a list within a list. So it has 2 lists inside it. So suppose, how do I want to access the first list? In order to access the first list, you just have to give spam 0. Then the entire first list will be displayed. If I want to see the second list, what you have to give? Spam 1. Then the entire second list will be displayed. Now suppose I want to access value within one of these lists. So that means I want to see list within a list. So then what I can say is, suppose I want to display BB. Then I have to give the first index. That means this is in spam 1. That is the name of this entire list. And within that BB is in again in the first position. So when I give 1, 1, then BB is displayed. So let's say I want to display 2 or let's say I want to display 3 on the screen, then what do I give? Spam 0. 0 points to the first list, and within this first list I want to access 3. So that means 0, 1, 2. I have to give here 2. Okay, so this is how you can access list within list containing other list. Now let's see another concept called as negative indexes. So far we saw that indexes value starts from 0 and it increments by 1. So that is when you are accessing the values of the list from the left hand side. If you want to access the values of the list from the right hand side, then the extreme end will start from the index -1 and it goes on, you just go on adding -1 to it. So this diagram demonstrates this. You have a list which is having the values 30, 45, 20, 15 and 60. If you are accessing the values from the left hand side, then you use positive indexes. So that means the value of 30 index would be 0. Here the index is 1. Here the index is 2 and so on. If you are accessing the values of the list from the right hand side, then the indexing will become negative. This rightmost value will have an index -1. Then you add -1 to it. -2. Again you add -1 to it. -3. So it goes on incrementing like that. So let's see this with a simple example. Let's say I have a list called as 11, 22, 33, 44, 55. So if I want to use negative index concept, so if I give here spam -1, then 55 would be displayed. So this is -1, this is -2, -3, -4, -5. Let's give -5. So you can see that 11 is displayed on the screen. So this is what we call it as negative indexes, and again in the same way you can do string concatenation even over here. Let's say I give hello and string concatenation. Since spam here is having an integer value, do typecasting spam -5. So you can see that hello 11 is displayed. So you, similarly to the previous case, you can use typecasting as well as you do string concatenation. The only difference here is when you are using negative index, you start from the right hand side and the index value starts from -1 and you go on incrementing it with -1. So the value will be -1, -2, -3 and so on. So let's understand this with a simple example. So just to revise, negative indexing is used in Python to manipulate the sequence objects such as lists, arrays, strings, etc. Negative indexing will help you retrieve the elements from the end from the right hand side. Okay, and the right hand side, the rightmost element will have the index -1 and then you go on adding -1 to it. So let's see a simple program. So in this program, what we have done here is we have created a list called as LST, which is going to have 5 values. So that is 30, 45, 20, 15, 60. My intention is to print all these values on the screen. So I am not going to give print LST of -1, print LST of -2. That's a very bad way of programming, right? You have to use a looping operation. Let's use for loop to access these elements of the list. Okay, so for I in range, as we have already seen in one of the previous sessions, you can have one argument here. When you have just one argument, it means it's the stop argument. If you just have 2 arguments, the first argument would be the start index, second argument will be the stop index. In our case, I will be using three arguments. So what does it mean? The first index would be the first argument will indicate the start, second argument will indicate the stop, and the third would indicate the step size. Why are we doing this? Is because we want to demonstrate the concept of negative indexing. So let's start from -1 and then we'll go on incrementing by -6. So that's why the start index is -1, so that we get access to the first element, and then we go on incrementing by -1. That's why the step size is -1. And what is a stop? This will be -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. So that means I should be able to display all the values till -5, and as I've already told here, there should be one value more than that. So that means -6 would be the stop. And then we are going to print. When we are printing, I want to give display both the index value as well as the value within it. So the index would be in I and the value of within that index would be in LST of I. So that is why we are printing here LST. This would be containing I value. Inside this you're going to get the I value, which is the index, and inside this we are going to get the value, that is LST of I. So that would be achieved by using dot format. So let's execute this. As you can see here, LST of -1 is 60, LST of -2 is 15, 20, 45 and 30. Okay, so please try all these programs which we have discussed in today's class, and in the next class we will go in detail with the some more concepts of list, and we'll also see some methods associated with list. Thank you.